Hey guys, this is Deborah Watson with Studio 222 Film Productions, and I am super excited about our next guest for the Not Too Far From Here season 2. Rasel, her and I actually met on social media, and we found out that we actually have a lot in common. So, Rasel, I would like to welcome you to the show and tell people a little bit about who you are and why it's important to address the issue of domestic violence.
Well, I'm 44 now, and what happened to me was when I was from the time I was 8 till I was 13, and it involved my stepdad. I've got my own kids now, but they're all aware of, what happened. My mom was involved also, but she just, she's in the other room, but she doesn't talk about it. She don't even go to hearings or anything like that. So mine's a little different. It's not, current or something that I just got out of. I've had to live with it my whole life. So.
So when you say you have to live with it your whole life, there's so many different levels of what domestic violence looks like. And in fact, just recently up by Springfield, Missouri, we had a young mother. She has a 3 and 5-year-old, and the father kidnapped him, didn't qualify for an Amber Alert. She openly said, he does have suicidal thoughts occasionally, but he loves his boys. He would never do anything to hurt them. And a state trooper actually saw them walking north on Highway 65 and stopped and talked with them, but didn't see anything alarming, evidently. And they found the 3 bodies a few days later, not too far from that site. And so it is an issue. Mental health is an issue. But for you, when you shared your story with me, I was sad that there were so many things that went wrong that didn't have to go wrong for you, that could have been avoided. And the magnitude of the violence that you endured, I can't imagine living through that in real life. And now you're able to talk about it. I understand why your mom doesn't talk about it, because it's a trigger for her.
Mm-hmm.
Just easier for her well-being to not talk about it. So how is it that you're able to talk about it when it was something tragic and traumatic that happened to you at such a young age?
Because I want people to be aware that the system fails. The system failed me as a kid. I came to school with abuse, with bruises on me. Um, they never said anything. Nobody tried to help me. 2 of my best friends finally decided that, enough is enough. They convinced me to go to the school counselor. And the school counselor's like, okay, well, I'll talk to your parents. Well, then in turn, the school counselor, they set them up for counseling. My mom and stepdad needed, counseling. So they sent my mom to counseling with him in the same room and asked her if it was abusive. And it's like, you can't ask something like that. They're not going to admit it in front of the abuser.
Right.
So they said it was me and my stepsister's problem, that we needed rules and boundaries set,
And this
is what the
was
counselor
before
did.
you were attacked with the knife?
That was the day. Let's say I turned it in like a week finally, and then by that Friday is when they sent my mom and my stepdad to counseling. And me and my stepsister came home from school, and I seen the strangulation marks on my mom's neck, because the counselor told my stepdad or my mom that it was us that needed boundaries, and my mom told him, no, it's not, we need a divorce. And he proceeded to strip her down and choke her, and then he realized we were coming home from school.
And what happened after that?
Me and my stepsister weren't allowed to leave the house. We weren't allowed to talk to anybody. We pretty much had to stay inside. Mom figured, well, we'll get out the next day, because he was supposed to go to work. Well, we weren't allowed to go outside still. He finally let me call my best friend. And when I called her, we kind of had our own, language to talk in, so that he didn't understand what we were saying.
Sure.
And she tried to tell her parents what was going on. And her parents told her, well, if we don't hear from them by morning, we'll call the cops. Well, this was Saturday by this point because we'd stayed up all night. He made my stepsister sleep in my room, which was at the back of the trailer. And me and my mom fell asleep on the couch and the floor. And we couldn't stay up any longer. You know, we couldn't get away. We couldn't get help, you know, nothing. And of course, my best friend, you know, was, well, if we don't hear from him by Sunday, because it was Saturday when I got to talk to her. And me and my mom, I guess, finally fell asleep. And all I know is I woke up to my mom saying, "Oh, what the hell did you do?" And she'd been on the sleep. Well, my hand had been up on the couch holding hers because I fell asleep on the floor. And she was on the couch. And she said she heard a scream is what woke her up. But when she sat up, she touched both of her hands to her head and came down, and they were both covered in blood. And he had come down a second time to hit me, or a third time to hit me, because he'd already hit me twice in the head with a hammer. So it was a claw part of the hammer that he used. My stepsister, after not having contact with her since that night, after, you know, we just got back in contact in 2018. And she told me she actually heard something that didn't sound right, and she came out of the bedroom. And when she came out of the bedroom, she seen him and, you know, screamed. And that's what actually woke my mom up. But my mom should have been dead. She'd lost so much blood.
Wow.
But, you know, and we had a sheriff that lived right across the street in the trailer park. Because at the time we were living in Cadwell's.
Wow.
So he pulled both me and my mom up on the couch and had his hands around each one of our throats, telling Alicia, get the towels, you know, somebody broke into the house, somebody attacked them, they're bleeding, you know. So she went and got wet towels. That didn't work. And we finally convinced Alicia to run out the back door to get away. And we figured we'd hold him, you know, we figured we were already dead. She went out the back door. Well, he finally broke loose. We headed for the front door. I pretty much dragged my mom, and we were both barefooted, of course, and I ran across the gravel. Well, when I hit the sheriff's door, I actually broke the hinges on it, is how hard I hit trying to get away from my stepdad, because I figured he was right behind us. The police officer said that, and of course his wife was a nurse, and he didn't know what was coming through the door behind us, but he was making sure. Well, he left his gun in his truck that night, in his sheriff's truck. And they had a cat that was on a leash outside, and he got tangled up with the cat's leash, so he couldn't get to his gun. If he would have got to his gun, my stepdad would have been dead right there on the spot. But he turned around and hightailed it back to the truck and took off. I was laying in the floor, and all I heard across the police scanner was that he was headed north on Highway 248. And I was like, he's headed to my best friend's house.
Oh.
He's after her because she knew.
Mm-hmm.
She lived out on HH Highway off of 248. And when they found his truck, there was only one way into her house. Down on HH, there's a not a gravel, it's a bridge now. And I went down there the last time I was in Branson. And he had his truck parked at an angle across the bridge so that none of the cops could get past to get to her house.
Gotcha.
And of course, the water was up that night, because this was in November of 1990. And the water was up, so they couldn't cross the creek with their vehicles. But yeah, so they took us to Skaggs and then had to life flight us to Springfield, to St. John's. And they gave my mom a 20% chance and me a 50-50.
Wow.
Because he'd hit her 7 times in the head. And when the nurse put the rag on the back of her head, she touched my mom's brain. So my mom has complete reconstructive surgery. But,
And
you know.
Stepdad today is where?
Huh?
Where's your stepdad at today?
He is in Farmington Correctional Facility.
Is he serving lifetime or?
that's where it got tricky too, because Judge Effort, he was the judge at the time. Well, they called him the hanging judge.
Okay.
So when we had to go up against him, go up against my stepdad and testify, I actually wasn't supposed to have anybody on the witness stand with me. They weren't going to let me see any of the pictures from the night that it happened, nothing. And I told them, no, you're going to let me see the pictures. And I was up on the witness stand. Well, they'd asked me several times from the time that we got out of the hospital, that, did he sexually molest you? And I denied it because he had told me that if I ever told anybody, he tried to kill me. Well, he just tried to kill me.
Right.
So why am I going to tell anybody?
Yeah.
So even on the witness stand, I never admitted to it.
Well, sure.
But when we were in the hospital, DHS workers came up and told my mom, well, we're taking her into our custody. We're taking her away from you. And I'm like, why? My mom's not the one that did this. My stepdad did.
Yeah.
You can't just get out of it.
Wow.
The one worst mistake that you can tell any abuser is I'm leaving or I want a divorce. You can't tell them. If they tell them, then yeah, he's going to make sure you don't. Never tell them you're leaving. And that's the mistake my mom did.
Gotcha.
Is she told him. And as soon as she told him, he said, if you can't find a body, they can't prove a thing.
Yeah.
And of course, in the middle of Missouri Hills, and at that time, there wasn't a lot of housing out there on Highway 248.
Yeah.
There was Cadwell's Trailer Park and Auto Center. And then farther out was, nothing.
Yeah. Because that was 30 years ago.
Yeah, it was in 90.
Oh. So we're going to kind of fast forward the hands of time just a hot second, not far though, because the thing that connected the two of us is when you said that you and your mom and somebody else started something. So after going through all of this trauma, major trauma, even as you were a teenager, you and your mom did something very unique and borderline miraculous for the county down here. Tell us about that.
We got involved with Dorothy Weber, and a couple other gals. I can't remember their names. I mean, I was 13.
Sure.
And I helped run the crisis center. I ran that at that time, we just had phone calls that we were taking. And I used to take phone calls for the crisis center. We had it set up like at after hours, it would forward to our own home phones because we didn't have an actual center for people to be in.
Mm-hmm.
So that's, we started the women's, helped start the Taney County Women's Crisis Center.
That's amazing.
And, it was something that wasn't there for us when we needed it. And I actually, I had my daughter in 95, and in 96, end of 96, beginning of 97, I actually had to utilize the Women's Crisis Center and go into one of their shelters because I was with somebody that, even though I'd been through all this, he ended up being abusive. We were driving down the highway and we got into a fight or something. I don't remember what started that, but basically he got out of the car. I got him out of the car. He kicked the window in, and I even drove to the Taney County Sheriff's Department with the window embedded in my face because he kicked it in. And all they did was issue a restraining order. And because he still lived in the house we lived in, that's where they tried to serve him with the restraining order. I'm like, he's not here anymore. And my mom had finally came down to get me and my daughter. Well, me and my mom have a love-hate relationship.
Okay.
So she had already moved up to Des Moines with her boyfriend at the time. And I wasn't ready to leave down there, I guess, because I fought her on it. She took me back to the shelter and I ended up going back to him because it's the only place I had. I mean, throughout the years after I got suicidal, I got out of control. I ran away. I moved in with my boyfriend, which was 7 years older than me. I was 14, 15. He was 21. I mean, I've been through a lot, and a lot of it happened in Branson. and the sheriff's department and the DHS workers and everything. It's like there's no support there because they would rather hide what happens in that town because they're a tourist attraction than admit what happens in their town.
Yeah, right after we moved down here, and I was born and raised in a small farm community in Kansas. And we lived outside the St. Louis area for about 10 years because I'm not a city girl at all. But I did a lot of inner city outreaches there. And when we first moved down here, there was a young lady from here that was exposing the human trafficking that was happening because it happens in every single tourist town. There is
It
not
does.
one town that's exempt from this kind of stuff, right? And I found it hard to believe because I was still kind of in that honeymoon stage, I guess you could say, of we're in a new town. It's supposed to be this wonderful, loving, caring place because that's what we always witnessed and experienced. And still we do, but we see both sides of the fence that's here now. And when she's like, Deborah, you lived in St. Louis, you know what to look for. She's like, just go down to the landing. And she told me the places to watch for. I was like, oh my gosh, it wasn't even 5 minutes. And I saw the girls walking together. And it's like, how did I not see it? Well, I didn't see it because I wasn't looking for it. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And I feel like that's something that went right for you, but also went wrong for you. So it's almost like the biggest strength was the biggest weakness because the school tried to help you, but they did it in a way that exposed too much too fast and put you guys in such danger. And I don't know that they knew enough about the mindset of abusers back in the day. You know, I mean, it doesn't excuse it or allow
I
it.
mean, he worked at the nursing home out there on 248, which is still actually there.
Yeah.
He worked there. They said, oh, he's loving, he's kind. You don't know him at home. I
Yeah.
mean, he was back up before we moved to Branson and all this happened. For the 5 years that my mom was married to him, I was led to believe that he was my real father.
Okay.
So, a dad's not supposed to do this. He cross dressed. He was a cross dresser. He said his thing was, Willie had ran away from home and he ran into Willie and he took on Willie's identity and his name was Cindy and he used to be a woman. And he's whacked in the head,
Yeah.
but he knew how to manipulate. He
Okay.
knew how to keep me and, because when my mom first married him, me and my stepsister were actually friends at kindergarten. The family, we intertwined then. And then when her mom found out, because I remember being at her house when he was married to her mom,
Okay.
and they'd shoot 22s at each other with the kids in the house.
Oh, you're kidding me.
No, we were in the bathroom hiding, and they're out there shooting 22s at each other.
Wow.
And, so, I mean,
I
it's
think of better things to do.
right. Well,
Wow.
when I was 11, he had moved us from California because my grandma had passed away.
Okay.
My mom inherited all the money from that. And okay, we're moving out of California. We moved to Illinois. Then we moved to Texas. Well, while we were in Texas, that's when my stepsister came to live with us. Then we moved back to Illinois. We lost everything in a house fire. We moved into this big, huge house. This is where he made his own bedroom and he made Alicia and me switch rooms. And he put a hole through the closet into my room and then put like a built-in closet up against the wall, even though I had a walk-in closet, so that he could come and go. Even if I locked my bedroom door, he could come and go through the wall and through that built closet to get to me. And I learned how to dodge knives from him, everything. So, it wasn't just this incident. It happened from the time I was 8. My grandfather and my mom's side of the family would see the bruises. And the only thing they would say to my mom is, you need to work on your marriage. You need to get your marriage figured out. Basically saying I lived in a group home in After all this, after I ran away, state took me. They put me in a group home up in Republic. After they moved me to Farmington Correctional, they moved me up to Farmington and put me in a group home up there. So the time that I was up there in a group home up there, I was like right around the corner from the prison where he was and never knew it because I was in Presbyterian Home for Children. Well, that's now since been closed. When I was in Republic, I was in Evergreen. That, I guess, has since been closed. I've drove by there. Because, I mean, I've come back down there and I visit. And I drive by the old places. And, I mean, it
Art?
really hit home the last time I was down there last October. And I went by the bridge where he parked his car and went by my best friend's old house. And, I mean, I still have contact with one of them. She works, I think, well, you've met her briefly.
Yeah.
I'm not going to bring up any names.
Yeah. So
Um,
if you could like rewind the hands of time, and we can't, but if you could, and if you could like wave that magic wand, what would have been the ideal scenario so that he didn't get set off and you and your mom could have gotten away? Because it sounds like since he was stepdad, there was probably a relationship before. So she's gotten out of relationships before. So it's like,
she was married to my dad for 10 years.
okay,
And I mean, my mom's been married 6 times and some of them were abusive. So,
gotcha. She's still just she was in survival mode for the most part.
yeah, I mean, he's in prison and I have to face him every 4 years because he has a parole hearing every 4 years. His next one is 2023, I believe. So I'll be back down in I won't go up to Farmington. I'll be in Jeff City doing a video conference call this time.
Okay.
And that's how they did it the last time because my stepsister, after 28 years, finally decided she was going to go with me and tell her side of it. And that was the first time that she had seen him since that night. Well, after that night, because when she went into state's custody, this is another reason that I say that DHS does not think, because he went after her and threw a knife at her,
Okay.
trying to kill her, but she got away. But they forced her. DHS took her to the prison to see him and forced her to sit down with him and talk to him. And she's like, I don't want to.
Wow.
So, I mean, the system is not, there's something wrong with the system. There really is.
I looked at the stats for Missouri, and not being from here, I wanted to know in black and white. You know what I mean? Because there are some shades of gray that things can go either direction, and it is very broken. There's not enough foster care families that are healthy that provide safety for the children. And in my lack of knowledge, I guess you could say, or the simplicity of how I think, is if you heal the parents, you heal a family. So if dad would have gotten the counseling he needed on his own, would his mental health have changed? Maybe, maybe not, because he would have had to stay on medication to help with the chemical imbalance that was like that switch inside his head that was broken. You know what I mean? So I don't know that he would have ever been able to be healthy for you guys.
I
However,
mean,
you guys have
his
been placed in a different community where you would have been safe. Like I don't know what the 100% answer is to every situation, but I do know if you heal the hearts of the mom and dad, then that heals a family, and then you don't need DFS. But there's so many variables with mental illness because mental illness is just as much it's as real as a broken arm, it's as real as kidney disease, it's as real as diabetes. I mean, it is a real thing that we have to live with in our country. You can't, I mean, they closed down a lot of the mental hospitals because you can't just lock them away anymore, but they are dangerous, and I don't know that people who don't live with mental illness understand that, because I know I have a hard time understanding it, even when I see it in post trauma. And so moving forward, because I'm very much a forward moving thinker. We can keep building shelters. We can keep telling people, you can go here and do this and get these resources. But moving forward, how can a state or a community be better effective for the kids? Because that's one of the things with COVID they were very concerned about, because now teachers can't keep an eye on them. Teachers shouldn't have to police the kids. They should be able to teach the kids, but they are in an environment where they do need to police the kids. So moving forward, what is a better solution to the problem?
Teachers now are more protective, so they see more and they turn more in. Back then, they turned a blind eye to it. They seen it.
So it's almost like they went from one extreme to the other, and there's
Exactly.
balance in between.
There was no in between.
So do you guys have like support groups, or like someplace where you guys as parents, when you go through stuff like this, that you have like a sounding board? Like how does that work?
Well, I had what they called a respite caseworker.
Mhm.
So that was through the up here in Des Moines is Lutheran Social Services.
Okay.
And if a parent needs a break, single mom, you need a break, they'll help you get that break. You can send your kids to a respite care provider for the weekend and just take time for you.
So pretend like I have absolutely no clue about PTSD or mental illness or anything, and speak to me as a person that just doesn't get it, and explain to me, like, especially as a teenager. So imagine I am a freshman math teacher. You know, I hated math, just for an FYI. I was not a huge fan of it. But imagine I'm that person and you're sitting in my class and you're wanting to say something and I'm just smiling and looking at you like I have no clue. But in reality, like I really do have a clue now. But just let's kind of pretend for a second like it's a script in a movie. What could a teenager like? Because I remember being a teenager. I'm old, but I'm not that old. I didn't talk to my counselor. I didn't talk to my teachers. Like how can a teenager find that bravery and that courage within themselves to walk up to the math teacher and say, "I can't go. My home's not safe." Like how can a teenager do that to somebody who's completely clueless?
It's hard. It honestly is. I mean, for me, I wouldn't do it. It took two of my best friends to convince me to finally do it. And they both went with me to the school counselor. If they hadn't went with me, I would have never said anything. My
Okay.
stepsister, never said anything. She had a different crowd that she hung around with. But it was more, I didn't realize how much he was abusing her until, a couple years ago. She didn't know about everything that was going on with me. He made sure to keep us both separate. So she wouldn't say anything. I never said anything. Me and her were always fighting. So the school counselors, like, okay, let's figure out what's going on between you two. And it was him manipulating it all. So, I mean, it's not always easy. I mean, you can't always get the courage. You know, a lot of there's a song that I actually relate to, and it's called Alyssa Lies.
Mm, yes. I haven't heard that song in a hot minute, but yes. You guys, that is a really good song. If you have no clue and you really want to help and you want to be a voice, listen to it.
The other one was Concrete Angel. That one was too late. I mean, Alyssa Lies, they were too late by the time they realized. And you don't know how to help. There's some people that really don't know how to help. They have to be ready too. If a kid is, if a kid starts to come to you and you realize that they want to talk to you about something, but they don't know what, or if you see the bruises, you can't always assume that it's and that's where it's tough for the teachers because Like my daughter, for instance, she got hurt at home. She had stitches. So they took it to the extreme. They called DHS. In my case, they seen bruises constantly. They seen bruises on me, my stepsister, my mom, and never tried to help. So, I mean, there's really no way to explain to somebody how to help. Even when I went back to school for the short time that I went back to Branson High, after all this happened, my stepsister was back in school. I was back in school. It's the only time we've seen each other. And I only stayed in school one day because the kids drew a picture of a hammer and left it sitting on my desk. So, I mean, there's a lot. I mean, the kids are just as cruel.
So for somebody who hasn't experienced it, so if I was that math teacher, let's say, is the best thing to do just to be willing to listen and be a safe place or a safe space? So when the child is ready to say something, that they know they can go to that teacher and that teacher listens.
Yeah, you let the teacher know, if a kid's walking by and you seem to be acting, like they want to say something to you, just say, hey, if you ever need a chance, ever want to talk, I'm here to listen. Just let them know that you're willing to be a soundboard. Even if it never goes anywhere, don't just because a kid tells you, okay, this is what's going on, I'm having problems being bullied. I mean, even if it's bullies in school, you can't just try to jump in and fix it the way you think you need to fix it. And that's what my school counselor did. Oh, well, you're having issues. You're being abused at home. So I'm going to call your parents.
Yeah.
I was being abused by my stepdad. I told them it was my stepdad. My mom's being abused. But when they call, they talk to both of them.
I'm so thankful that we connected. And next time you're in Branson, I can't wait to meet you face to face, hopefully.
Yes, I plan on making another trip down, but I got to get everything, straightened out up here. So,
yeah, got to take care of first things first.
oh, yeah.
All right. Well, you guys, if you want to join with us and help be a voice for those that have no voice, just like she was back as a kiddo, go over to studio222films.com. Feel free to grab one of the shirts. There's the hashtag hope, the hashtag kiss domestic violence goodbye, and our new one that's attached to the film, break the silence, break the cycle, because hope is really not too far from here. No matter where your here is, no matter what the situation is, there's always help, there's hope, there's healing. But we have to be able to be willing to connect when they do reach out. And sometimes it involves us reaching out and connecting with them.